Okay, welcome, family. Hope all can hear me. Um, last time had issues with my sound, so welcome, Chris. Welcome, Christopher. Can you hear me, bro? Just want to make sure I'm loud and clear this time, because this is gonna. I have some very, very informative information, powerful information to share. Okay, have my headphones on. Mic check. Mic check. Testing 1, 2, 3. No sound. Are you kidding me? Wow. Uh, oh my God. Wow. Okay, hold on, family. Hold on a second. Oh, you can hear me? Dry bones? Awesome, awesome, great. All right, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's get some more people in here. Thanks for showing up here. And we're going to get things right. I still have to learn how to work this StreamYard platform. I'm new to this here. So and I have to assign certain moderators as well, which I'll do once I um, learn how to use this here. Maybe for the next presentation, which will actually be in a couple of days, because we're just going to hit the cover the surface of this deep reservoir of information that we have to get clarity on. And again, as always, my attempt is to help, of course, American Aboriginals, and also, many of us who have ancestors who came over as, returning back to America after, being away for centuries, right? So, I kind of came up with the term American returnees for that. Hell, if Jesse Jackson can call us African Americans, I can make up my own term as well, which would be more accurate, right? So, well, let's just go ahead and get started. I just want to get into the meat of it, the information. I would like to first give some honors and thanks. Thanks to Truth Searcher and Empress Hobart and A1 and all those who supported me there, and and all those in the chat, and all those who listened to me up to this point for you take time to listen to me over the last year since I've been here. Hopefully my information has been added value in your life, right? And that's what it's all about, adding value, and that's what I'm here for. So as the title states, Indian Territory Revisited. So as you remember before, in many of my earlier builds, I brought forward the Solomon Sir Jones footage from over 100 years ago in Indian Territory, which was very valuable information because with that information confirmed um, a lot of our feelings and beliefs that we knew that up in that particular territory, which became Oklahoma as a state in 1707, I believe. Um, but as you see there, I mean, first of all, they say that there were at least 60 towns all over Indian Territory, at least 60. So, which could be more than that, right? And based upon the evidence from Solomon Sir Jones, they were responsible. They were the ones demonstrating the tenets of the Muskogee Constitution. Because I presented that before as well, um, where finance, medicine, health, agriculture, law, politics, all of that was mandated from the Constitution. And then that Sir Solomon Jones footage, we just seen the individuals demonstrating, that in real time, right? So, and then we heard about many of the so-called struggles of what they termed freedmen, in those particular territories. And then their legal struggles, and then of course, and I believe it was in 2007 or so, there's the case, the legal case where they were actually kicked out of I believe the Cherokee Nation, right? And then they had to fight for that, and they were actually allowed to come back in. But see, many of those individuals have been duped out of their own legacy and inheritance, because that's what it's all about, land. And unfortunately, many of them had their inheritance taken away from them. And so we're going to get into a lot of that, because, as you know, the so-called freedmen, and to see that the freedmen, after this presentation tonight, family, it's going to be a question mark, because what that did it really mean? Who really were the freedmen, right? Because they tell us freedmen were, melanated individuals who were so-called former slaves of the image of the Indian that they put out to the world, right? And that they didn't really get land. They got duped out of their land, right? And then their land allotments were limited, so-called, to just 40 acres. So a lot of information we read about them that comes, the covered story information, the fraudulent information tells you that, well, freedmen's were only allotted 40 acres. Well, this information tonight is going to, expose all of that and more. So let's get right into it. But before we get into that, I want to actually complete some of the information I did in my last presentation. And it was, let me just get back into that, about what it looks like the Mormons are doing with many people's ancestors, right? And as you remember, we brought this information out last week. So let me just wind that up first. So as I mentioned before, I have a new client here, and he's descendant of the Hayes, right? So, and then I show this here. Let me first screen share. Excuse me. Let me get back to share my screen here. Let me share my screen. Okay, you have to let me know if you can see this here. Hold on a second here. Okay, that there. Let me blow it up. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see this here. Excuse me, forgive me, family. I don't, once I get into my build, I don't really look at the chat. I'm just following the little map I lay out here with the points I have to hit. So forgive me if I can't read any of the messages, but I'm going to have to go to the messages now, because I need you guys to type a 1 in the chat to let me know if you can see my screen. That's why I need a moderator here. So once I figure this stuff out, let's see. And once I figure this stuff out. Okay, so let me know if you can type a 1 there, if you can see this screen here. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Wanda. So now I'm actually have my cell phone to the side. I can actually see it. All right, so this here, it's the Hayes line, right? Right, Hayes, and so this was it's a kind of new client of mine here, and his ancestor Hayes. We can confirm a lot of this stuff here. So, but now take a look at this here. Now, as I showed before, hold on, let me go back to what I showed during the last presentation before I show this. Let's see. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. Okay, here it is here. Okay. So now this here, right? Let's go to the other one's better version. One in hijack. That's the title. Okay. So this here. So Samuel Hayes, right? Make sure everyone can see that. So there's Samuel Hayes, born in 1690, died in around 1761. Okay, and so you see here birth. Now this is a registration card, family. So this is what the Mormons use. So as we all know, with our genealogical research of these databases, ancestry, the Mormons set all these databases up. These are their companies. They're the custodians of the world's genealogical records, right? Now, those that are familiar with the Mormon religion, that the reason that the ancestors are important to them, for them, and because they believe that the souls come and inherit bodies, and then they're reincarnated on this plane, and then so ancestors that were not part of their of the Latter-day Saints church or cipher paradigm. So what they do is they're going to take ancestors from the past, and they're going to have this ritual, kind of like a baptism, this whole ceremony that they do with these ancestors. And their belief is to make sure that these ancestors are right with their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So here's an example of one of my guy's ancestors, and he's melanated like we are, right? But this particular, someone registered his ancestor, some Mormon individual did this. And so we have the birth year, Isle of White County, Virginia. He's a male, and they give him an ID number here, right? And then he died here in Northampton, North Carolina. And then the person's IDs, this is the Mormon person's identification number, right? So they registered this particular ancestor. Now let's look at what I pulled up before, and then we'll see exactly what they do with these ancestors here. Let's go back. To here. This one here. Okay, now let's blow this up. Blow this up here. Okay. Now this Jesse Hayes is a descendant of what we just saw, the Samuel Hayes, right? Now look at this here. This is what they do. So let me make it bigger to make sure everyone can see this here. This is important here. You have to see this real clear here, right? Okay. Jesse Hayes Sr., okay? Okay, now, so we see here, here's a registration number, 266427. Parents, Jesse Hayes Sr. and his wife, Isabel Jernigan. But let's look at Jesse Hayes first, right? He was born 1740, North Carolina. He died 1822 in Lincoln, Tennessee. Jesse was baptized on 16 February 2011 in the Mount Timpanogos, Utah temple. He was endowed on March 23rd, 2011 in Salt Lake, Utah temple. Jesse married Isabel Jernigan, and this is her registration number, 266428, one up from his. They were sealed on June 9th, 1994 in the Laie, Hawaii temple. Now, let's go down to the wife, Isabel Jernigan. So Jesse Hayes Sr. was born in 1740. Now look at this. Isabel Jernigan was born November 1st, 1652. That's nearly, 100 years before this guy, her husband, supposedly. So if she's born in 1652 and her husband's born in 1740, how old will she be in 1740? Let's do the math on that, family. Hold on a second. Let's do the math on that. 1740 she'd be 88 years old. So they want you to believe that Isabel was 88 when she married Jesse Hayes. Let's continue. She died October 10th, 1821. So how old would she have been in 1821? 169 years old. She died when she was 169 years old. Let's continue. She died October 10th, 1821 in Lincoln, Tennessee. Isabel was sealed to her parents on December 3rd, 2003 in St. George, Utah Temple. She was baptized September 18th, 1993 in Laie, Hawaii Temple. She was endowed on November 29th, 2003 in St. George, Utah Temple. Isabel married Jesse Hayes. They were sealed on June 9th, 1994 in the Laie, Hawaii Temple. They had the following children. Okay? Let's see. Reverend John William Hayes. This is, again, my guy's ancestor. So now she had a child. Isabel had a child in the year 1767. Right? So if she's born in 1652, let's do the math on that, fam. We have to be very detailed here, right? If she's born in 1652 and had her first child in 1767, she was 115 years old, family. Oh, we're not finished there. There's another son, Thomas H. Hayes, who's born in 1775. So this is the point where I'm trying to make here. Sometimes you can make a mistake, right? You get the year wrong and you say, oh, wow, that's incorrect. I got to correct that. We can't publish that information. It's a mistake, right? Well, wait a minute. Not only did they publish it, but it's registered. They have registration numbers here. Fraudulent genealogy. So when you're desperate and when you don't have an identity, you want to hijack other people's ancestors. And this, we have a clear case here, family, where we have fraudulent genealogical information and ancestors that obviously do not belong to these people, because if these are these people's ancestors, they'll have the correct dates, right? But they register this and let it go on, and these people were baptized in the latest year, 2011, over 10 years ago, nearly 11 years ago, and no one made the correction. So that means that when you're dealing with thieves do desperate things and they're sloppy because they're frauds. This is the kind of information they'll come up with. So we talk about it all the time. When you take a deep dive into your genealogy, right, you're going to find that your ancestors were co-opted, hijacked. You're going to find duplicate copies. You're going to find all kinds of craziness, right? So here we have now tangible evidence right before our own eyes, family, of what they're doing up there in Utah. So I wanted to complete that because that was what I kind of left off with doing my last presentation. So let's get into the meat of it here. All right. So first, I want to start off. We heard about, they tell us a lot about Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? And many of us have heard of Rosewood, Florida incident, right? The Rosewood, Florida incident. But very few of us know about that they actually gave reparations to the survivors of the Rosewood, Florida incident. How many people knew that? If you knew that, Put a 1 in the chat if you knew that. That the Rosewood, Florida survivors were given reparations. How many people knew that? Greetings, JR. Not a lot of people. Not a lot of people. But I found this article, and it's interesting because they actually were given, reparations in 1994. This was before the Tulsa reparations case. But isn't it interesting that they didn't use this case sample in the Tulsa case? They never used this. They never talked about it. They basically buried the information. Now, it's not about whether or not the reparations equal with the value. They really got what they deserved. We're not talking about that. That's a different issue. The issue is whether or not, these people got reparations and they were given damages. We don't have to worry about the amount because they did get screwed, but we don't have to worry about that. But at least they got that. But it's interesting that they didn't use the same case sample in the Tulsa reparations case. That they didn't get anything in that, right? And none of these people ever talk about the the Rosewood reparation case, which you can use as a case precedent example. So now let's get to the meat of this here, right? We know about what happened there. It was a small town. They had their own community there in that part of Florida, right? Starting back way in the 1800s, and then of course, and it was 1923 because Tulsa was 1921. This was 2 years after. This was 1923, right? And then here, this is the field. We're going to get to the part of it real quick, so I want you to see this here. Stimulus Commission. Okay, so here it's House Bill 591, right? January 4th, 1994. That's when it was filed, right? Now this is a whole nother process, legal process, family. So it's called a claims bill. So the Tulsa case, they took the court route, right? Filed a lawsuit, but this particular process was filing of a claim bill, and that goes to Congress. They'll have a hearing on it, and then they'll appoint a special master. In this case, it was Richard Hickson, right? And then they'll hear the evidence. So it's not conducted as a legal case in court. It's a claim bill that's presented to the House, and they'll conduct hearings on it, and then they'll listen to the evidence, and then they'll reach a conclusion. But it's interesting that the Tulsa reparations case, they didn't follow the same suit, which they should have here. But let's get to the point where they issued this. Let me make it bigger to make sure everyone can see this here. Let's make it a little bigger, maybe 200. Okay, hopefully you can see that. 400. No, that's too big. Let's go back down to 200. Okay, right here, 200. Okay, so let's get to see what they got here. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of it here. Okay, let's go move through House. Okay, it moves through House. Okay, so let's hear. House Bill 591 was heard by the House Committee on Judiciary on March 23rd, 1994, and passed as a committee substitute. Unlike the original House Bill 591, the committee substitute did not list the survivors and descendants of Rosewood individually, nor did it provide for specific appropriations to each individual survivor and descendant. Instead, it provided for a $500,000 appropriation from which each eligible family could be awarded from $20,000 to $100,000 for real and personal property damages. The committee substitute directed the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to investigate the 1923 Rosewood incident. Right? So, and then, of course, April 1st, 1994, that's when it was heard next there, right? And let's get down to here. So, okay, right here. The Appropriations Committee reported the committee substitute favorably with 2 amendments. The first amendment provided an appropriation of up to $150,000 to each African-American Rosewood survivor. The second amendment created the Rosewood Family Scholarship Fund, offering scholarships to minority individuals with preference given to the direct descendants of the Rosewood families. So basically, this particular amendment to what they want to offer would be $150,000 to each survivor, and then it would be a scholarship fund set up for their children to go to university on that particular scholarship, right? So the committee substitute was passed by the full House, which added 2 amendments. And so here are the preamble clauses of the amendments here. Whereas Rosewood, a small town in Levy County, Florida, was once a happy and thriving community, but in 1923, the town was transformed by a lawless and bloody massacre into the memory of time and hate and terror. And as Florida moves toward the dawn of the new century, the very definitions of honor, justice, and morality cry out for the state to rectify the Rosewood tragedy as best it can, and thereby diminish the shameful blemish on its history that is known as the Rosewood Massacre. So we have all this here. And so here, the of at least $150,000, and then of course the university scholarship deal, right, for that there. So this went through, and they actually agreed to this here, family. That's all we need. I'm not going to go through this entire thing, but if anyone wants a copy of this journal, email me and I'll give you the full PDF of this here. But my point is this here. So the Rosewood survivors in 1994, although yes, the payment amount of $150,000 each, and then college scholarships doesn't even equal to what they lost, right? The generational wealth, because they had everything during that time and they lost all of that, right? But the point of the matter is that we as descendants or as Americans, anyone can force and pressure the Senate to a hearing, right? We don't need these enemy who represent us, the Sharpton types, to go up and talk, because they're not going to do anything. But the point is, since this was a success, minus out the amount that they were given, but we do have an example that no one talked about or told us about. So I wanted to share that with the family there, that they use the claim bill approach, and where they'll go directly to the House of Representatives to seek remedy, as opposed to taking filing a lawsuit and going through the court route, right? So this does present another route you can go through, the claims bill route. So I wanted to share that there with the family there, and that although they got screwed, but at least they were given some form of reparations, right? that they kind of buried this story and never told us about that victory there. All right, so now let's move on to this here. I'm going to go ahead and move on here. And before we get into the image, now that image on my thumbnail for this presentation, family, is a very, very important individual in Indian Territory. Okay, his name is Warrior Renty. Now, but it's going to be a shocker. Renty's not the real family name, because he was, doing my deep dive, I noticed they changed their name. He's actually a Macintosh. And we're gonna show all that later on. But I just want you to know the individual image on my thumbnail is Warrior Renty, aka Warrior Macintosh. Okay, and he's a very part of a very, very important legal case in Indian Territory that they never told us about. Well, we're going to all learn that today. But before that, I have to set the family up here, right? So we have to clean up the corrupted information and programming that we were victims of. So let me pull up some information, because I need to clear out the minds here, right? Make sure everyone's clear here. Now I'm going to just do some juxtaposition of evidence information here, family. This is what they call so-called free African Americans, right? I presented some of this before. I'm going to present it again, because we have to repeat and beat out the negative information that we've been exposed to. So some modern editor created, based on genealogical records in Virginia, came up with this information, and they titled it "Free African Americans" in Virginia, in Maryland, those areas, right? But this is, I just want to point this out, how how they're describing them, right? Let me make this bigger here. Let's make this bigger. All right, here's one here. Sarah Moore, born about 1795, obtained a certificate of freedom in St. Mary's County on March 30th, 1819. Daughter of Ann Hall, about 25 years of age, complexion dark, born free. Okay, Hamilton family. Let's see, Hanser family. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out there. So they said complexion dark. So we need to be clear on what dark complexion is. Okay. Now, I don't think that, excuse me if maybe I'm wrong here, family. Maybe you can help me out. Christopher, would you consider Bill Clinton dark complected? Honestly, would you consider Bill Clinton dark complected? Any family, anyone in the chat, would you consider Bill Clinton dark complected? Anyone? For any reason? No, of course not. Right? So let me pull up another one here. Here's another one. Here's another one here. Let's pull this up here. So we got to set stuff straight here, right? Here's another one here. He's we call him a dark mulatto man, free person of color, right? Mary Ann Hall, born of Mary Ann Hall here, is 25. She has a bright complexion. Now that's a bright complexion. Didn't say pale. Pale and bright's different, right? Wouldn't we call Yvette Cornell, the lady who's running that ADOS crap? Wouldn't you consider her bright complected? Wouldn't you consider Derek Jeter bright complected? So bright complected still doesn't mean Bill Clinton. So I just want to first set the tone first, get everyone clear on when we're talking about complexion, that we will not confuse dark complexion with someone like a Bill Clinton or Brad Pitt. Okay, so now we're going to I'm going to introduce the family to some esteemed individuals in the state of Alabama, because it's going to be important to when we're dealing with the Muskogee individual on my thumbnail, Warrior Renty. So I'm going to take everyone to Alabama. But before I do that, we're going to get clarity on the definition here first. On this word, because you see this word in your census records, right? You see this word in your census records, but everyone's confused on it. But we're going to get clarity here now, especially when you go pre-1860 census records, right? And when you're in like 1830, the 1700, the 1790, the first United States federal census, right? Although you had census before that, states and all that, but the United States federal census. So let's get to Black's Law Dictionary, because I'm sure the family's seen this word a lot. Free white person. Okay, so we have to understand what this word means. Now, I presented the definition of this many times, but we're going to do it again, so everyone's clear on this, because this is what you're going to see when you're looking up these early census records. But do not fall for the sorcery. Let me blow it up so it's big. Black's Law Dictionary definition, 4th edition, so everyone has clarity on this. Okay, because they did a flip-flop on that, and when we're dealing with this, we don't think complexion, fam. We're thinking class, status. Okay. All right. Free white persons referred to in Naturalization Act as amended by Act July 14th, 1870, has meaning naturally given it when it was first used in Statute 1, Section 103, C3, meaning all persons belonging to the European races, then commonly counted as white, and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have immigrated. Okay, now let's break this down. Free white persons as amended by the July 14th Act of 1870, family. So pursuant to this particular act, the definition was changed to this in 1870. So before 1870, it did not have this meaning, where the Act of July 14, 1870, and afterwards, free white persons meant all persons belonging to European races, then commonly counted as white. But what did it mean before 1870? Okay, well, let's get down to here. It includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with peoples of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, Slavic descent. It includes Magyars, Lapps, Finns, Basques, Albanians. It includes mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, Moorish inhabitants of Spain or Portugal, and mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenician, North African inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav or Tartar inhabitants of South Russia. It does not mean the Caucasian race, Aryan race. Okay? So now, so when you see, for example, Paul Slocum, aka Paul Cuffey, on the 1790 census, remember, Paul Cuffey was born in 1767. He's on the first federal United States census in 1790. His class is free white person. But it doesn't mean that he's pale, that he looked like Bill Clinton. So you're going to see this in these records, 1800 census, 1820, 1830. But we know now, because they hijacked and co-opted it after the 1930s and changed the now remember, family, these census records, these records, our ancestors created these records. These are our records. The Johnny-come-latelys changed the records after 1930. If it was their original records, why would they have to change them? They wouldn't have to, because they weren't around during those times. So they did the flip-flop after 1930, right? So, so we're clear here now on that this was a class of individuals, and many of your ancestors in these earlier census records would have this particular class, right? So now let's move on to certain esteemed individuals in Alabama before we get to Mr. Lord Rentia, aka McIntosh. So I'm going to first start off with this particular individual here. Ephraim Kirby. Don't know if many of you have heard of him, but he's very, very important. Now, so before I get into his bio, I got the 1790 census. And let's blow this up, make sure everyone can see it. Do you see that 1790 census for Ephraim Kirby, 1790? Okay. And as he's right here. See that? Ephraim Kirby. Let's blow it up so everyone can see his name. He's right here. And as we stated before, we go to the top of the census record, right? Top of the census record. Well, they cut it off there, but these are, you see that? Free white person. See that? Heads of families, free white persons. So that's the class of these individuals, and that was Ephraim Kirby's class during this time. Okay, has nothing to do with his complexion. So we're going to get into his complexion. We're going to get into that. Okay, so let's get into that there now, because we need to know who these individuals, who were some of the early settlers of Alabama. Let's get into that. Okay, Kirby. Bio of Kirby right here. All right, let's blow this up. So now, because before we get into Alabama, we need to know who were some of the esteemed individuals early on in Alabama, what they looked like, so everyone's clear, right? So we have to break away at the sorcery here. Okay. Okay. This is information from an account of some of the descendants of Joseph Kirby of Hartford, Connecticut. Okay. Following is Mr. Kirby's record for this period of service. Ephraim Kirby, private. This is his muster roll information. Enlisted December 24th, 1776 at Litchfield. Litchfield is in Connecticut. He was a farmer. His stature, 5'6", complexion dark. Eyes dark, hair brown. He was discharged August 7, 1778. Dark complexion, family, just like we read the information, the so-called African-American free person in Virginia, dark complexion. We're not confused that we're not talking about someone who looked like, Trump. Dark complexion. Now, let's get into who he was actually. He although he's born in Connecticut, he moved down to Alabama. Let's get into some of this information here. He was essentially a pioneer, the first to edit a published volume of official decisions and reports, the founder of the first organized temperance movement in America, and the first superior court judge in what is now Alabama. An old lawyer of Litchfield pays this warm tribute to his worth. Colonel Kirby was a man of the highest moral and as well as physical courage, devoted in his feelings and aspirations, warm, generous, and constant in his attachments, and of indomitable energy. He was withal gentle and winning in his manners, kindly in his disposition, and naturally of an ardent and cheerful temperament. As a lawyer, he was remarkable for frankness and downright honesty to his clients, striving to prevent litigation and effecting compromises. He enjoyed the friendship of many of the sages of the Revolution. Judge Kirby was the first General Grand High Priest of the Royal Arch Masons of the U.S. and was in office at the time of his death in 1804. the first General Grand High Priest of the Royal Arch Masons of the United States. Go to part 2 on him. So we need to know this, family. Judge Kirby. All right. So Abraham Kirby, first Superior Court Judge of Mississippi Territory, born 1757, right, in Connecticut, died 1804. Son of Abraham and Eunice Kirby. Grandson of Roger Kirby, right? Great-grandson of John Kirby. Great-great-great-grandson of Joseph Kirby of Hartford, Connecticut, who immigrated from Warwickshire, England, in early 17th century. So he's an American returnee. Mr. Kirby was educated at Yale College, but left without taking a degree. 1787, Yale conferred upon him an honorary degree of Masters of Arts. In 1787, I thought we couldn't go to these universities. No, family, we set up the universities. When we're finished taking these deep dive into this real information, family, you're going to come to the realization that these pale skins were not around during the 15, 16, 1700s. And the very few that were servants. They did not lay the infrastructure to what we enjoy today. So let's continue. After the Revolutionary War, he entered the law office of Reynold Marvin in Litchfield, Connecticut, and after diligent study was admitted to the bar. He practiced law for several years in Litchfield. President Jefferson he was appointed by President Jefferson supervisor of internal revenue and direct tax for the state. 1803, he was made land commissioner. That's the person who deals with it's kind of like the Bureau of Land Management. Deals with all the patents, the registration of all that. Mr. Kirby was one of the original 35 proprietors of the Western Reserve in Ohio and one of the first board directors of that company. He was appointed by President Jefferson, the first Superior Court judge for the Mississippi Territory on April 6, 1804. Mr. Kirby immediately proceeded to his post, Fort Stoddard on the Alabama River, near present Mount Vernon, where he died a few months later. Okay. So, just wanted to point that esteemed individual out in Alabama, right? And there's so many others there in Alabama because we need to be clear on Alabama. So now I'm going to run a 1-minute video, family, on Warrior McIntosh or Warrior Renty. It's just a minute long. And this is how they set it up. They only gave us a minute, and we're going to understand why they only gave us a minute of this information about him. Let's get to that video. Let's get to that video. Let's get to that video here. Okay, here it is here.
Tulsa really begins to become a boom town after oil is discovered. Much of it was drilled on land owned by indigenous and black people. Backed by the government, white settlers tried to seize control of the land.
Oklahoma passed a law where white guardians were appointed to children whose land allotments had struck oil. Guardians handled the money that was being brought in from the oil. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars, and not in today's money, in that day's money. Warrior Renty, his family's land had struck oil, and they had appointed a white guardian to his children. The argument was that the parents were incompetent. AJ was there, they went over and spoke to this newly appointed guardian. And Warrior told him, "The day that you are a guardian of my children is the day you will die." Warrior was arrested. Thus, the expose of the Guardianship Racket began. AJ not only managed to prevail in the case so that Warrior was awarded guardianship over all of his children, they started the Negro Guardianship League so that they could help others who were part of this awful racket.
Okay, fam, it's very, very short there. But you know, we got enough info. I plucked out the real meat of the information there, and you know, came up with a whole lot of, which allowed me to do this, present this information to you, just based upon this minute that they gave us. But now I'm going to kind of back it up a bit, because I believe a lot of this is cutting and pasting and sorcery, right? Because look at this one particular image here. Right, where is it? Right. Where is it at? Right here. This right here. Right there. Look at this. So we got this guy here with a gun. So what's the image that they want to convey to us? It's more fear mongering. And look at what they write in the script. White settlers tried to seize control of the land. So you look at this here, and then we say, oh wow, the Tulsa incident. They came in, you know, a couple of pale skins in the pickup truck and just destroyed the entire area of Tulsa, and went in and took all their stuff. So the fear mongering is that, oh, so they would just easily just take our stuff, right? And we were just too weak to fight back or to do anything about it, and they just dominated us. But no, that's not true. We can't take this image and to think that this guy with this gun here, and this used to be one of our ancestors' area, and he just came in and just with this rifle shot and killed them and scared them off, and now he's controlling their land and their area. Man, we're not going to go for that crap any longer. No, it's not true. Because if you have one pale skin who took one of our ancestors' land via a rifle, don't you think they're all going to come in and do the same thing? And so therefore you would never had a Tulsa. You would never have had a Bowley or the 60 plus towns, because they would have just taken those towns. They would have taken the oil mines and the oil fields and all of that, right? That's logical. But that never happened. And we're going to get into one day about the Tulsa incident, because based upon my information, I think it was an inside job. It had nothing to do with pale skins. That's a cover story. Remember, they had the military there, their own military, the Muskogee military. We saw the military base in Solomon Sir Jones's footage. But we're going to get into that another time here. So now let's move on here. But a lot of these images, they're cutting and pasting stuff. And this is going to become clear. It's going to become clear here. All right. So I wanted to show that. But now we're going to back up, because I want to introduce little points about this case. The Harrison versus the Department of Interior case. Okay? Because this issue with Freedman. And before that, we're going to get into... so Freedman. This is a Library of Congress article. So they want us to believe that Freedman, the Emancipation Proclamation, 13th Amendment, freed all slaves in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of quote-unquote African Americans in the South faced new difficulties, finding a way to forge an economically independent life in the face of hostile whites, little or no education, and few other resources such as money. The freedmen. That's the image of what they want us to believe what a freedman is. But I'm going to present this particular case to you, family. Many of you may not have heard of this case. It's the Harrison versus the Department of Interior. It's the case title. Okay, let's go to the top. United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, right? August 28th, filed August 28th, 2000. Plaintiff, appellant Sharon L. Harrison versus the Department of Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Jack Cheney, Acting Area Director, Office of Tribal Services, Jack Cheney. So she sued them. Why did she sue them, family? Well, she is suing them because one of her ancestors, she wants to be counted as a blood quantum member, not as an adopted member, right? So let's get into just a little bit of this here, right? In January 1997, Harrison submitted an application for CDIB, which is basically blood quantum for the Choctaw Nation, and for tribal membership to the Choctaw Nation on behalf of herself and her other relatives who are not involved in this appeal. She claimed entitlement to blood quantum based on her purported lineal descent from Cyrus H. Kingsbury, who was enrolled as a member of the Choctaw tribe on the final Choctaw rolls, right? But the Choctaw Nation, acting on behalf of the BIA, denied Harrison's request. It stated although Cyrus Kingsbury was enrolled as a member of the Choctaw tribe, he obtained this status as a white person adopted by the tribe, referred to as AW or adopted white, rather than by possessing a specific quantum of Indian blood. Harrison appealed this decision to the Muskogee area director of the BIA, who reached the same conclusion as the Choctaw Nation and denied the request for blood quantum. The director further found that Ida Kingsbury, Lucy Ann McDermott, and Annie Keel, other ancestors noted by Harrison in her application, were listed on the rolls as freedmen with no Indian blood ascribed. Family. Adopted whites into the Choctaw tribe were listed as freedmen. See, so the notion of freedmen is, family, we can't listen to them for what it means. That's been our mistake. So here we have a case of Miss Harrison trying to get recognized as a blood member of the Choctaw Nation, right? But her application was denied, right? Because in her, when we looked there, her ancestors that were listed on the rolls, they were listed as freedmen. Now let's double down and triple down, family, because I've also found I have Freedmen Bank records, right? And let's take a look at this here. Some applications here, right? Let's blow this up, make it bigger. So this term freedman, the meaning is still a question mark, family. So here's some of the early applications of the Freedmen Bank accounts, bank holders. Okay, we have Joseph B. Craig, date of application, April 30th, 1873, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Okay, we have John L. Collins, May 11th, 1873, and it gives a lot of details. Where he was brought up, New Orleans, residence, age 28, complexion black, occupation, he's a shoemaker. Okay, here's another one. Augustus Craft, May 2nd, 1873, residence, can't read that, 19 years of age, complexion white. Okay, let's go down here. Freedmen Bank account holders at the bank, Freedmen Bank. Let's go down here. There's another one. This individual. Date of application, April 30, 1873. Complexion white. Occupation, dentator. It's a question mark, family. And the poor people who got kicked out of Cherokee Nation, that go through that legal suit and the whole issue of them being freedmen and the colorable, corrupted meaning of that term, and with the purpose of stealing their land holdings. Okay, now let's move on here to the case. Now we saw in that video that Warrior Renty was represented by AJ. Now the girl doing the talking, she's a descendant of AJ. But isn't it interesting how she coldly talked about her own ancestors? She didn't once say, "Oh, it's my great-great-grandfather." And she called him AJ. Why would she disrespect her own ancestor? His name's Andrew Jackson Smitherman. Have some respect for your ancestor, girl. You respect that man. My great-great-grandfather, you don't call him AJ, but there's a reason for that. Because they don't want you to know about who AJ was. But I have his information that I'm going to share with the family here. We're going to get into the attorney, Andrew Jackson Smitherman, who represented Warrior Renty in the Racket case, because the Guardianship Racket family was started in Indian Territory. It's big business in the probate court now, guardianship, conservatorship. That all came from Indian Territory. And when they want you to believe that it was pale skins doing that, I'm not buying that. I think there was other melanated people trying to dupe the people out of their land holdings. So let's take a deep dive a little bit. Let's learn about Mr. Andrew Jackson Smitherman. Okay. Okay. So he was born, let's see here, Andrew Jackson Smitherman. Let's pull up this article, family. It's a very important article right here. Right here. Here he is. The Victory of Greenwood. That's Greenwood, Tulsa. A.J. Smitherman. This is the lady's in that video, that 1 minute video. This is her ancestor. Okay. All right. So I don't think I can make that bigger, but I will read it anyway. Anyone wants a copy of this article, just email me. I'll send you the link there. Here it is here. So A.J. Smitherman is best known for being the founder of the Tulsa Star Black newspaper and the first Black daily newspaper in the nation. However, there's much more to celebrate about Smitherman's life and work. Smitherman was an accomplished attorney, an entrepreneur, a fierce social justice advocate, as well as a prolific journalist and poet, with a writing career spanning 53 years. Andrew Smitherman was born in Chittersburg, Alabama on December 27, 1883. Now they talk about his parents here, but I'm not going to, that's bull crap, because I have the genealogy I'm going to show. So let's get into, Smitherman was the second eldest of 11 children. His father owned a coal mining business and a general store, managing 80 employees. When he was a small boy, his family relocated to the Muskogee part of Creek Territory, known at that time as the home of the Upper Creeks. Muskogee was not officially incorporated as a town until 1898. During their time in Muskogee, Smitherman's father continued working in the coal mining business. His mother worked as a school teacher. As a young man, Smitherman joined his father working in the coal mine in Lehigh, Oklahoma. The work was both difficult and dangerous. Smitherman's mother did not want him to follow in his father's footsteps. Being a teacher, she insisted he get an education. While there were he was accepted into Kansas University, and while began in 1876, Smitherman wrote in his autobiography published in Buffalo Empire Star that he went on to study at Northwestern University, LaSalle University Extension in Chicago, and then he went on to receive his law degree at LaSalle's main campus in Boston. Smitherman returned to Oklahoma in 1908 to work as a legal clerk for William H. Twine, an attorney who owned a small weekly newspaper called the Muskogee Scimitar. For 3 years, Smitherman would work as both a law clerk and a journalist. All right, so Guardianship Racket. Soon after the discovery of oil in Creek territory in the late 1890s, I'm going to read exactly how they wrote it. Powerful white men established what Smitherman called the Guardianship Racket. Land ownership laws before statehood were so lax that a person appointed by the courts could establish themselves as guardians of the children of Native American families, simply by petitioning the court using the defense that the parents were, quote, insane, quote, incompetent, or otherwise unfit to raise their children. If the court agreed, the new guardian would take guardianship of the children and any land owned by that family. This scheme, detailed in David Grant's book, Killers of the Flower Moon, was a way for, quote, what they wrote exactly, white men empowered to steal property and mineral rights from these families. Okay, now let's get into this. This information is very important, family. Smitherman would take on many of these cases, fighting on behalf of the families to help them keep their lands. One of the most famous cases was that of Creek freedman Warrior A. Renty. Renty was also an attorney and a journalist, working as the co-editor of the Muskogee paper called The Pioneer. Family, my thumbnail, that image, Warrior Renty, aka Warrior McIntosh, was himself an attorney and journalist, co-editor of the Muskogee paper called The Pioneer. We're not finished about Lord McIntosh. That's what I'm going to call him, Lord McIntosh. Renty's family owned a total of 1,600 acres, earning an estimated $120,000 per year in land royalties, family. $120,000 in the late 1800s and early 1900s is valued today like $30-40 million, the equivalent of that. Okay, and his for land royalties for the oil being on his land. In 1910, Renty received a letter that a new guardian was appointed to his children, and he'd be losing his family and land. He refused to cede his land and was arrested. After posting bail, Renty took his case to William Twine and Andrew Jackson Smitherman. The newspaper Muskogee Scimitar published the details of the story and found more than 3,000 similar guardianship cases, showing that $100 million had been stolen from Native American families. $100 million that they took. Did they discuss this in the Cherokee trial? No. You see why they had to kick him out? You see why they had to come up with a fabricated story that you guys were slaves? Let's continue here. So they won that case. He got back his family, his children, and his land. Lord McIntosh, aka Warrior Renty. He got all that back, family. And again, he was getting royalties in excess of $120,000 a year off of his 1,600 acres and his family. Now, this is interesting. It's very. I got some of the census records of that I want to show the family of Renty, aka McIntosh. This is important because it shows how long he still had control of his land and was benefiting off of his land. So let's look at this here. The 1930 census records, 1930, right here. Okay, this is the 1930 census, Warrior Renty. Let's blow it up. And you're going to see this here. Go right to the top. See that Department of Committee Census Population Schedule, right? In the year 1930, okay? So you see that 1930. Now let's go down to Warrior. Okay, right there. See that Warrior A. Renty, okay? And it's his time, his daughter is with him there at that time, 1930. He's the head still, right? And here the 6,000. Now the O represents owned. Let's go to the top of the categories. So we're clear. We're presenting real facts. We're not going to misrepresent facts. We don't do that because that's fraud. Home owned or rented. O for own, R for rented, right? And value of home if owned. So we have the owned or rented in this category, the value of your home. Okay? So let's go back down to where Renty Warrior is located. Right? Go back down here. Here he is, Warrior A. Renty there. Head. O for own his own property still in 1930. Value 6,000 value on it. So he still had his land family in 1930. So I haven't went beyond that point there. But, you know, he didn't lose his land. He still has it. So I want to share a little bit of the esteemed Andrew Jackson Smitherman's information. Now, Andrew Jackson's father is James Smitherman. Okay? His father's James Smitherman. This is the 1860 census. All right? And his father's born right around that time, 1860. So he would have been a child. Now, Andrew's father's James Smitherman. His grandfather is Robert D. Smitherman. Okay, this is the 1860 census here. Let's go to the top so everyone can see. This is the attorney who represented Warrior. Okay, as you see there, free inhabitants. And again, it's Smitherman's Alabama. That's why it brought forth the esteemed Judge Kirby in Alabama. So we're clear on what people, the elite would look like in Alabama. And he's from Alabama here, right? This is here in Bibb, Alabama here, 1860, right? Let's go down to the Smitherman location here in the census record. Now remember the lady in the video, this is her descent line. Here it is. R.D. Smitherman, Robert D. Smitherman. In 1860, okay, he's 30 years old. Let's go down to his father. Here it is. James. James G. Smitherman. So this was Andrew's father. Now he's 10 years old in 1860, which means he's born in 1850. This is his father. Okay. And then this is his brother, Andrew. And it looks like James named his own son after his brother, Andrew Smitherman. Okay. Now this is the 1860 census. Let's go to the 1851 here. Make it bigger, a little bigger there. It's 1850. And let's go up to the top here because we need to see this here. What does it say? Free inhabitants, family, Alabama. 1850. Robert D. Smitherman. And there's his son. That's Andrew's father, who's only 1 year old in 1950. James G. Smitherman. That's his father. This is his grandfather, Robert P. Smitherman, who was 21 at the time. So make sure he's born right around 20, 50, 31, 30, 29, right around there. Okay, now I wanted to point this out because this is what I found on Robert P. Smitherman. It gets deeper, family, right? It gets much deeper. Here is a copy of Robert D. Smitherman's 1858 land patent in Alabama. Let's blow this up. Get rid of that. Okay. All right, here it is. Let's blow it up so everyone can see this here. Here's a copy of the patent. United States of America, to all and to whom these presents shall come, greeting. Whereas Robert Smitherman of Bibb County, okay? That's why I wanted to show you the census records, fam. Let's go back to the census, right? What does that say? County of Bibb, county, state, Alabama. So we know that's him. That's his patent. Robert Smitherman of Bibb County, Alabama, right? Let's make it smaller there so we could kind of read it, okay? And this is a patent based upon the 1820 Act, right? And here is containing 198 acres and 96 hundredths of an acre. Okay, this patent is still active, still valid, in the original patent holder's name, Robert Smitherman, Andrew Smitherman's grandfather. The lady in that 1 minute video, she's a descendant, and I don't know if she's aware about her ancestors' land patent. I don't know about that, but again, these people, the Smithermans, landlords. Andrew represented Warrior Rentia, aka Warrior McIntosh, who owned 1,600 acres in Indian Territory with oil reserves on his land that he benefited from. So there is not all doom and gloom, family. There's a lot of victories and people who did not have things taken from them that we just don't hear about. And I just wanted to present a lot of that information and give motivation to many of those who have ancestors in Oklahoma with land holdings, ancestors in Alabama. You know, who one of the ancestors could have a land patent. You know, this is what all this is about: helping you claim your ancestral estates and inheritance. Because many of your ancestors left you a national treasure. It's your duty and responsibility to confirm that. You got to spend every waking moment of in your day to do that, not with distractions, not with useless, unvaluable talk and information. So I want to close it out and leave it there. And again, thank the family for, taking time out, your day, and hopefully you found this information valuable, because that's my purpose. Yeah, thanks a lot there. And anyone wants to reach out to me, again, my email's there. You can email me anytime. And again, thanks a lot. Sorry I don't really read the chat when I'm going through my presentation, but I will catch up with the messages later, and then we'll respond accordingly there. And thank everyone. Thanks for your support, your continued support. I will come back again with another presentation on my Thursday, which would be your Wednesday. So my Thursday there. So thanks again, and I appreciate all of you there. Peace.